The road to darkness. The sun had climbed past its zenith when Shamaz urged his white mare through Castle Stormmoor's gates. The healer sat astride the horse with practiced ease, his deep blue robes billowing behind him as he rode. In his saddlebags he carried medicinal supplies, ancient texts he'd copied overnight, and a growing sense of urgency that had plagued him since watching the king depart that morning. He'd spent hours in the archives after Edrick left, poring over fragmentary accounts of the ancient sealing. The more he read, the more convinced he became that this journey would require more than swords and stealth. The text spoke of corruption that twisted flesh and mind alike, of wounds that festered with unnatural darkness, of madness that descended on those who ventured too close to the failing seals. They would need a healer. Shamaz leaned forward in his saddle, pushing his mare to greater speed. The road north stretched before him, well-traveled and clear. If he rode hard, he could catch them before nightfall. Behind him, Captain Torvin stood atop the castle walls, watching the healer's white horse disappear into the distance. "Ride fast, old friend," he murmured. "Bring them all back alive." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the road when Rose spotted the rider approaching from the south. Her hand went instinctively to her sword hilt before she recognized the white mare and the blue-robed figure astride it. "Shamaz," she called out, reining in her horse. Beside her, Edrick and Alluria did the same. The healer caught up to them, his mare breathing hard from the sustained gallop. Shamaz's weathered face showed the strain of the ride, but his dark eyes were sharp and determined. "You left without a healer," Shamaz said simply, as if that explained everything. Edrick's expression softened. "You should have stayed at the castle. We need you researching the seals." "I copied what I could. Captain Torvin has the texts." Shamaz patted his saddlebag. "But words on parchment won't help if one of you takes a corrupted blade to the gut. The archives can wait. Your lives cannot." Rose smiled despite the gravity of their mission. "Stubborn old goat." "Wise old goat," Shamaz corrected, returning her smile. "There's a difference." Alluria had been studying the northern horizon where dark clouds continued to gather against the natural wind patterns. "If we're all here, we should move. Those clouds haven't dispersed since this morning. They're growing." Edrick nodded. "Then we ride. Shamaz, can your mare keep pace? She's carried me across the deserts of Naswaiwana and through the mountain passes of the eastern ranges." Shamaz stroked his horse's neck affectionately. "A few miles of Stormmoor Road won't break her." The four riders set off together, moving at a steady canter that ate up the miles without exhausting their mounts. The road curved through rolling farmland, past villages where people stopped their work to watch the riders pass. Some recognized their king and offered hasty bows. Others simply stared, perhaps sensing the urgency in the travelers' pace. As the afternoon wore on, the landscape began to change. The farms grew sparser, the fields less tended. The trees that dotted the countryside took on twisted shapes, their branches reaching like gnarled fingers toward the darkening sky. "We're approaching the corrupted zone," Alluria said quietly. "See how the grass turns brown even though it's summer? How the birds have stopped singing?" She was right. An unnatural silence had fallen over the land, broken only by the rhythmic thunder of their horses' hooves and the whisper of wind through dead grass. Rose's hand never strayed far from her weapons. "How far to Silverthorn Forest?" "Another hour's ride," Edrick replied. "We'll make camp at the forest's edge. I don't want to enter those trees in darkness." "Wise," Shamaz agreed. "The corruption is worse in enclosed spaces. The trees themselves may be changed." They rode on in tense silence, each lost in their own thoughts. In Edrick's saddlebag, the amulet's pulsing had grown stronger, its rhythm almost matching his heartbeat. He could feel its warmth even through the leather, and occasionally he caught whispers in that ancient tongue, words he couldn't understand but that filled him with inexplicable dread. The sun was touching the western horizon when they spotted Silverthorn Forest ahead. It rose like a dark wall across the northern landscape, its trees unnaturally tall and dense. Even from a distance, something about it seemed wrong. The forest was too still, too quiet, too dark beneath its canopy. "There," Alluria pointed to a cleared area perhaps 200 yards from the forest's edge. "Good sight lines, defensible position, close enough to water." They made camp with practiced efficiency, each knowing their role from years of traveling together. Rose gathered deadwood for a fire while Alluria scouted the perimeter. Edrick tended the horses, checking their hooves and ensuring they were securely tethered. Shamaz unpacked his supplies and began preparing a simple meal from their provisions. As darkness fell, they gathered around the fire. The flames cast dancing shadows across their faces, and beyond the circle of firelight, Silverthorn Forest loomed like a sleeping beast. "I've been thinking about what we know," Edrick said, breaking the silence. He pulled the amulet from his saddlebag, and its green light pulsed brighter in the darkness. 3,000 years ago, something threatened to destroy the world. Our ancestors couldn't kill it, so they sealed it away. Now those seals are failing. "Faster than they should," Shamaz added, stirring the pot of stew hanging over the fire. "That's what troubles me most. The seals were designed to last forever, or near enough. Yet they're breaking down in a matter of weeks." "Someone's helping it," Alluria said flatly. "Or something. The question is who and why." Rose poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling into the night. "What I want to know is what this thing actually is. The Shadow King, the Devourer, the Ancient Hunger. The texts give it different names, but what is it really?" Shamaz was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old memories. "In Naswaiwana, in the city of Tabaraz where I was born, the priests keep records that stretch back beyond memory. They speak of the dark days, a time when something ancient walked the world, consuming everything in its path." "You never mentioned this before," Edrick said, leaning forward. "Because I thought they were myths, stories to frighten children and remind people why they should respect the old ways." Shamaz shook his head. "But that amulet speaks in the same tongue as the oldest tablets in Tabaraz's temple vaults. This is no myth, my friends. This is history we've forgotten." Alluria's expression had grown distant, her dark eyes reflecting the firelight. "My people remember too. The Urith Empire, before it fell. My grandmother told me stories passed down through generations, of cities that vanished overnight, of armies that marched into darkness and never returned, of the sky itself turning black as the world died." "The Urith Empire," Rose breathed. "That was 3,000 years ago. My people survived in strongholds hidden deep in places like Silverthorn," Alluria continued. "We learned to live in the shadows, to move unseen, to fight from darkness against darkness. It's in our blood now, that ancient fear and the skills born from it." Edrick looked at his three companions. Shamaz from the distant deserts of Naswaiwana, Alluria descended from the ancient Urith Empire, and Rose. "Rose," he said gently, "you're quiet." Rose had been staring into the fire, her strong features set in hard lines. When she looked up, her eyes were fierce. "I'm thinking about Kirkwall, about the day the raiders came." The others waited. They all knew pieces of the story, but Rose rarely spoke of it. "I was 7 years old," Rose continued. "My father was Lord Kirk, and he thought stone walls and loyal soldiers would keep us safe. He was wrong. The raiders came at dawn, not ordinary bandits, but something worse. Men with eyes that didn't reflect light, who laughed as they killed. Men who moved wrong, like puppets with cut strings." Shamaz's expression darkened. "Corrupted. I didn't know the word then. I just knew they were killing everyone." Rose's hand unconsciously touched the pommel of her sword. "My mother hid me in the chapel cellar. I heard her screaming, heard her die. I heard everyone die, and I waited in that darkness, certain I was next." "But I came," Edrick said softly. "It wasn't a boast, just a statement of fact." "You came," Rose agreed. "A 16-year-old boy with his father's soldiers, riding to Kirkwall's aid too late to save anyone but a terrified child hiding in the dark. You found me, Edrick. You pulled me out of that cellar, and you promised me I'd never have to hide again." Their eyes met across the fire, years of shared history passing between them in silence. "You kept that promise," Rose said. "You trained me, taught me to fight, to stand, to be strong. You never treated me like a broken thing that needed protecting. You treated me like a warrior in the making." "Because that's what you were," Edrick replied. "What you are. We all found our way to you, didn't we?" Alluria observed. "Shamaz fleeing the political purges in Tabaraz. Me, the last of my family line, looking for purpose. Rose, surviving the impossible. And you, the prince who would be king, collecting broken pieces and forging them into something stronger. "We're not broken," Shamaz said firmly. "We're tempered. There's a difference." A sound from the forest cut through their conversation, a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. All four were on their feet instantly, weapons drawn. The fire suddenly seemed very small against the vast darkness surrounding them. "Did you see that?" Rose whispered, pointing toward the tree line. Something moved. Alluria's eyes narrowed, her night vision sharper than the others. There, and there, multiple shapes, staying just beyond the light. Shamaz began murmuring under his breath, his hands moving in complex patterns. A soft golden glow emanated from his palms, pushing back the darkness a few precious feet. In that expanded circle of light, they saw them. Creatures that might once have been wolves or deer, but were twisted now into nightmare shapes. Their bodies were too long, their joints bending at wrong angles. Eyes glowed with sickly green light, the same color as the amulet. Patches of their fur had fallen away to reveal skin that looked more like tree bark or stone than flesh. "Corrupted animals," Shamaz said grimly. "The texts mentioned this. The ancient evil doesn't just consume, it transforms." "How many?" Edrick asked, his sword steady in his hand. "6 that I can see," Alluria replied. "But there could be more in the shadows." The creatures circled their camp, staying just beyond weapon range, watching with alien intelligence. They didn't attack, just circled and watched, their movements disturbingly synchronized. "They're studying us," Rose breathed, "like they're learning." "Or reporting back," Alluria added darkly. Edrick made a decision. "We maintain watch and shifts, 2 awake at all times. Shamaz, can you sustain that light?" "For a while, but it drains me. We'll need to rely on the fire and our own vigilance." "Rose and I will take first watch," Edrick said. "Alluria, Shamaz, get what sleep you can. We'll wake you in 3 hours." The corrupted creatures continued their vigil as Alluria and Shamaz settled near the fire, weapons close at hand. Neither truly slept, merely rested with eyes closed, ready to spring into action. Edrick and Rose stood back to back, covering all approaches. The night deepened and the temperature dropped. Their breath misted in air that had been warm just hours before. "They're still out there," Rose murmured. "I can feel them watching." "I know." Edrick's grip tightened on his sword. "This is just the beginning, isn't it? These creatures, the corruption spreading through the forest. This is what happens when the seals fail." Then we find Grandmother Yaga. We learn what we're truly facing, and we stop it. Rose's voice was steel, whatever it takes. In the saddlebag by the fire, the amulet pulsed faster, its whispers growing urgent. And in the darkness beyond their small circle of light, the creatures watched and waited, their eyes glowing like fallen stars. The hours crawled by. When it came time to switch watches, Edrick and Rose woke Alluria and Shamaz. The healer's light had faded, and they relied now solely on the fire and the moon, which cast everything in silver and shadow. "They're still there," Edrick reported quietly. "They haven't attacked, but they haven't left either." Alluria nodded, her hand resting on her daggers. "Get some rest. We'll need you sharp when we enter the forest." Edrick and Rose lay down near the fire, but sleep came reluctantly. Every sound from the forest jerked them back to wakefulness. The snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the occasional glimpse of glowing eyes. Shamaz and Alluria maintained their vigil, speaking in low tones about what they might face in the coming days. The healer shared what he'd learned from the archives, while Alluria described the old Urith stronghold deep in Silverthorn Forest, a place her people had maintained in secret for 3,000 years. "If anyone knows about the ancient evil, it's the elders at the stronghold," Alluria said. "But the path there is treacherous even in the best of times, with the corruption spreading." "We'll manage," Shamaz assured her. "We always do." The night wore on. The corrupted creatures eventually withdrew deeper into the forest, though their presence could still be felt like a weight pressing against the edges of their camp. When dawn finally broke, painting the eastern sky in shades of gold and pink, all 4 companions were awake, none having truly rested. They broke camp quickly and efficiently, eager to leave the exposed position. Silverthorn Forest loomed before them, its entrance like a gaping maw. The trees were ancient beyond measure, their trunks thick as houses, their branches forming a canopy so dense that little light penetrated to the forest floor. Once we enter, there's no turning back until we reach the other side, Alluria warned. The forest is vast, and the paths shift. It's easy to get lost, easier still to walk in circles until you die of thirst or worse. But you know the way, Edrick said. It wasn't a question. I know the way to the stronghold. From there we can reach Laketop. Alluria's expression was grim. But with the corruption, the landmarks I know may have changed. Rose checked her weapons one final time. Then we stay close and we stay alert. Shamaz mounted his white mare, his gaze fixed on the dark trees ahead. In Tabaraz, we have a saying, "The desert tests your body, but the darkness tests your soul." I fear we're about to learn the truth of those words. Edrick pulled the amulet from his saddlebag. It was pulsing so rapidly now it seemed almost alive, and the whispers had become nearly constant, a stream of ancient words that set his teeth on edge. "It knows we're close to something," he said. "It's trying to warn us, or guide us. I can't tell which." "Perhaps both," Shamaz suggested. "The ancient ones who created it wanted it to be found. They knew this day would come." The four companions exchanged glances, drawing strength from each other's presence. They had faced danger before, had fought side by side through countless battles. But this felt different. This felt like the beginning of something that would change everything. Edrick urged his horse forward, and the others followed. As they passed beneath the first ancient trees of Silverthorn Forest, the temperature dropped sharply. The sounds of the outside world, birds, wind, the rustle of grass, cut off as if a door had closed behind them. They were in the forest now, surrounded by shadows that seemed to move with purpose. The path ahead was narrow and winding, barely visible beneath centuries of fallen leaves. And from somewhere deep within the forest, something howled, a sound that was neither animal nor human, but something in between, something wrong. The hunt had begun.